Welcome back, Eres fam, to another season of Eres Tea Talks, where we spill the tea on taboo topics affecting our community. We are excited to announce that we'll be taking this season to the next level. And when I say next level, I mean we will also now be a podcast streaming on all major platforms. If you haven't already, make sure to check out season 1 on our channel, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, ding ding, to be alerted on new episodes. Before we start though, we do want to mention that this may be a triggering conversation. As a domestic violence survivor myself, I want to encourage you to take a step back when needed and care for yourself if you are triggered. I am Bianca, your host, coming from Lenape land, aka New York City, and with me are 3 incredible guests. So first, we're going to start off with Dara Lee.
Hi, I'm Dara Lee Vasquez Garcia. I am from Brooklyn. Very proud of my Puerto Rican ethnicity, heritage, and I'm still here in Brooklyn, and I work for Connect, Safe Families and Peaceful Communities.
Your fam, my name is Viv Moran. I'm an Afro-Indigenous Peruvian multimedia artist. I also have my own podcast called Oye Mi Gente Podcast, where we discuss same, topics that affect our community, along with LGBT topics that, I feel like it's important to talk about.
Hi, I'm Sarah. From Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, born and raised. My family's Puerto Rican, and I'm a facilitator by identity, and a lot of the things that I talk about and work with are specifically young people around healthy relationships and intimate partner violence, and I'm now going more into like language access and disability justice, so I do all of that through like an anti-racist lens.
Awesome. Do you see why they are so incredible? So I want to thank y'all for joining me today, taking time out of your busy schedules to talk with me about this. And so I guess the first thing that I really want to do is I want to define the difference between domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Oftentimes, I know that they're used interchangeably, but there are stark differences between the two. And so I wanted to start there. And see where that takes us.
All right, I could jump in on that one. So domestic violence is an umbrella term that has family violence in it. And so family violence could be sibling to sibling, child to parent, regardless of age. And intimate partner violence is usually defined as between intimate/romantic partners. Intimate, not meaning that like y'all had to have sex. It could happen with young people who were just dating. Historically, it's been about like cohabitation for the most part, but it's now, especially within New York, it's understood that it's young people, it's queer people, it's people who don't have kids involved. So anyone who basically dated or talked to each other for a little bit could be considered intimate partners.
And that also includes ex-partners as well. And I do want to make note of that intimate partner violence does include your ex-partner. So you can still receive post-separation violence through the lens of intimate partner. And then alongside, I also want to mention with domestic violence that oftentimes we forget the elderly fall in the umbrella of domestic violence, and they experience a whole nother level of abuse that, is often, I feel like, forgotten about and only mentioned when something happens in a nursing home, but that can actually be beyond that. It can be within a home, between roommates and things like that. So thank you for that. And so I guess, so we've defined domestic violence, right, as this umbrella term for different forms of abuse and forms of violence. And then we have intimate partner violence, which is specifically geared towards intimate relationships, and in more particular relationships that have a romantic aspect of them to them. And so now that we understand that, I guess, what are the different forms of abuse that can fall within domestic violence as a whole, right? Because many of them also then fall into intimate partner violence.
So I can jump in on that. There's a lot of physical, there's emotional, there's verbal. Verbal I feel like it's one of like the biggest terms of like abuse, because verbal there's emotional like manipulation that goes under that. So you don't necessarily have to get physically abused, but if you are berated or manipulated into not, feeling like you're good enough, that can still.
Coercion is also a part of that.
Intimate partner violence is understanding that these behaviors are tactics that are pervasive, and they're actually done to maintain power and control of their partner. And so something that we usually leave out is just understanding that, is it really harm? Is it a mistake that the person made, or is it actually abuse? It's actually someone wanting to continue to have that control over the partner. And so you have, yes, you have the financial abuse, you have emotional abuse, you have stalking, you have physical, and that's the one that nowadays a lot of people are looking for, is just like, prove to me that you're going through domestic violence because I need to see your scars. But when it comes to emotional abuse, those scars can't see, right?
Forgetting like you mentioned, the economic and the financial abuse. There's psychological, sexual, citizenship abuse, using someone's immigration, spiritual, and cultural.
And cultural abuse, right? And so all of those are coming from that blueprint of having domination and power control of that person. So that's where we have to understand why these behaviors take place, when it comes to a relationship.
And so what could that look like? You know what I mean? So, and I asked that because, like you said, so many people are looking for the scars, forgetting that abuse is not always a physical thing, that it can be, the scars can be invisible and internalized. And so, why does this form of, or why do these forms of abuse still even exist? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that is keeping this, what seems like an epidemic? Because, I mean, the numbers are 1 in 3 women, 1 in 2 transgender persons. These numbers are extremely high when you're thinking about them, because right now there's 4 of us at a table. So 1 in 3, that's already one of us. And I don't think that it's maybe just one of us at this point sitting in the room.
And it even goes further than that. If you have to also think about, out of those 1 of 3, there is someone who's being killed once an hour, or even three women in a day. You have to also think about that. And so it's hard to see the bigger. We could put out all the facts out there and put all these numbers and percentages, but, it's about saying, wow, 1 a day or 3 a day, that's a lot. That's a lot. And it's happening as we speak right now.
And also, you were saying, like, why does it exist? And we live in a world in which power exists. We live in a world in which we applaud often people having power over. When we think about being a boss, right? Like, that's a goal, and that's because you want to have power over, right? Like, you want people working for you. Racism is having power over, right? Sexism, heterosexism, all this is like having power over other people. And we live in a world where that is a goal, where it's acceptable. And intimate partner violence, dating abuse, that is in a more micro level, where it's now all of these things that I'm learning from elsewhere, I'm now implementing a lot of it into my relationship, where I don't feel powerful. I need to have power over often. And
it's like almost like a control. Like, if you don't have the control of the situations, or not even control over your emotions.
Right. And I like the way Sarah mentioned the fact that it's about power over, and why this is still happening is just like, in our communities, we're not having the right amount of preventative education or resources to understand what power with looks like. Yeah. And so it's always like, we all want power, in a healthy way, which we deserve, right? But it's just like having access of what does like power with look like in a relationship, like a healthy power with, it's just like maintaining that balance. And which I think is one of the reasons why we never have you're like, how is there's a blueprint for domination, world domination and patriarchy, but there isn't a blueprint for us to love each other in the healthiest way, to have that power with.
I think it also is based on culture. I mean, it also, and that stems from like religion. Even in the Bible, it mentions that the man is the one that has control and the wife is secondary. The woman, is only to bear children, to be a mother, to cook, to serve the husband. Husband goes first, children come last. Mm-hmm. And she comes after that. So she's like the last person she has to think of, he or she. But I feel that because of religion teaches culture. Mm-hmm. Within the culture, our parents teach us, even our mothers. Our mothers can teach us to be as independent, as we should be. But at the end of the day, women are to serve. We're just meant to be like one thing. So in being taught that, we don't really notice when we're in abusive relationships. Or if we have witnessed abuse in our homes between our parents, it almost becomes like you're accustomed to it. So if someone's like gaslighting you, so gaslighting is all about manipulation. It's changing your perception of reality. So if you're like having a discussion, like the sky, for example, if you're saying the sky is blue and you're giving facts on why the sky is blue, but your partner is telling you like, no, you're wrong. The sky is green. This is why the sky is green. Do you even know your colors? Like, how do you not know that the sky is green? Like, look at it. It's green. This is what green is supposed to look like. So now you're being told, this is why it's green. This is why it's green. And then you're like, well, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am dumb. Maybe I don't know my colors. Maybe the sky is green. So you start to believe that the sky is green. And then every time you bring things up on how this person is treating you the wrong way, they're like, I'm not treating you that way. This is how you're being with me. And this is me reacting towards you. And that's gaslighting. And that goes on in our families. Our parents do it to each other. And in that, we're like, okay, that's normal. And this is why we don't see it.
If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse.
Hi, my name is Jainel. I'm the Violence Intervention Program Hotline Coordinator, and I'm here to give you some information about us. Our hotline is a resource for persons experiencing different types of violence. And the role of our hotline is to help people address their immediate safety concern. We are not first responders or emergency responders, but we do assess needs for shelter, crisis counseling, and also provide immediate resources, such as food pantry information and also any assistance that you may need regarding how to address child support or divorce. You can reach us at 1-800-664-5880 and speak confidentially with a live, highly trained counselor.
So we're talking about like kind of from the top down, right? So it comes from this macro place, and our relationships are the micro of what that power and control looks like. And I've seen the power and control wheel where coercion and threatening and isolation and minimizing and denying and all those different parts are a part of it as ways to identify, I guess, potential harmful relationships, right? So then when we're thinking about it in this hierarchical way, what ends up happening with our youth? And how they are taking on or not taking on what they've now seen or been taught or been exposed to.
I feel like, so as an immigrant myself, I've had to take on a lot of roles. So what is happening, like in an immigrant household, as also the first child, you are now becoming a second parent. So you pretty much have minimal childhood to no childhood. And then now you're noticing abuse coming on. So it's like you're taking responsibility to bring your siblings somewhere else, which I had to do a lot of that. It was always like protection. I had to hide, my sister so she wasn't able to see it. But then we would still hear screaming. I can remember when I was like 6 years old, the first time my mom was hit with a bottle over her head I can't even remember what the argument was. But it was definitely a lot of argument. Being the parent, taking care, feeding, making sure that my sister was okay. It's never me being okay, but my sister being okay. And then my mother being okay, checking in on my mother. And then it's like, what is happening now to your childhood? Because now you're becoming an adult at 6 years old. You're no longer, imagining yourself like being a ballerina or being a princess. You're not afforded those things because the reality is you got someone else to take care of because you're not really being taken care of yourself.
It keeps the abuse. It keeps the cycle.
The cycle
going.
Yeah, it's normalized. And when you're living a life where you're either discriminated because of your gender or immigration, or you're rejected, you feel like this is like normal. Everywhere I go, this type of treatment is what I receive, so this is normal. I guess that's why that was your experience with that. And with the whole understanding gaslighting, and I don't like to use the word crazy, but the crazy making of your reality, that happened to me. I was just like, what's going on here? It was just like I remember like my whole frontal lobe, I always say that it fell off and it just got back. It was just the weirdest experience.
Developing imposter syndrome.
Right. I was just like, what is really going on, And it was the gaslighting and the emotional manipulation of what was said to me. And it was just not, it was not the best place to be in. And I don't want anyone to ever go through it. It's just, This is why I do the work that I do. And because I always thought that, DV, domestic violence, was just like the umbrella term. This is happening at home, the fighting, the pushing, the isolation. But the manipulation is real. And that type of manipulation is very, very specifically done.
And also, I just wanted to jump in with, for like young people, a lot of times they don't have control over what they consume for the most part. And, like when I do my work, I always ask about Romeo and Juliet because it's over 400 years old and adults continue to like remake it and feed it to young people. And we romanticize it. It's considered a tragedy, but we romanticize it. And when we are teaching it, or when we're saying things like, you're my Romeo and you're my Juliet, things like that, specifically like within the U.S., it's like we aren't having conversations around healthy relationships, nor are we having conversations around suicide. And so it's this like, if I can't have you, I need to not exist for the most part. And we don't take into consideration like youth development, right? They are going to go for their pleasure zoned way more, even if they know that like this might be a little dangerous. Their pleasure zone is so much bigger, so they're gonna be like, but this might feel good, so I'm gonna actually go in this direction, even if I know I'm not supposed to necessarily be doing that. We like have shows, songs, all of these things that romanticize this like sacrifice that, and we say that, right? You have to sacrifice to be in a relationship, but like you don't. But that's the narrative that we've been putting out so often, is that like you have to sacrifice, and then we don't talk about what exactly are you sacrificing and it's yourself for the most part. And like, young people are not dumb. Yeah. But we're like, here, you do this, and we're not gonna talk. We ignore it. We don't talk to them about it. Like, if we were able to talk to them about it, and I have spoken to them, they know. And the moment you start giving them the information, they're like, oh yeah, that's actually messed up. Oh, next time I hear no, I'm actually gonna like stop and have a conversation with my partner, right? Because we're not giving them the space to believe that they are having relationships enough to even be able to handle them. We're not giving them the tools. Most of us don't know it, right?
So I think it's safe to say, you know, in hearing all of this, that domestic violence can affect anybody. And in particular, intimate partner violence is beyond the adults. That it too not just affects children involved, but children themselves can emulate that. And so that's important for us to remember. And now for our final sip of tea. This topic is never an easy one. We see at a macro level power displayed as having power over others. Racism, sexism, capitalism, even classism, to name a few, where violence is used to maintain control. Defining the various forms of violence within our relationships and the ways it shows up allows us to see the desire of having power over others reflected at a micro level. What other ways have you seen power and control play out in your relationships? Be sure to share your answers in the comments to continue the conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to follow us on Instagram at eres.u. I want to thank our guests for joining me and our viewers for tuning in. The conversation continues, so stay tuned for next month's episode on understanding abuse. Never forget, eres you, own it. See you next time.